Hello all, welcome back. We are going to go ahead and get started. We'll get started on our third and final session of our conference. I hope you have enjoyed as much as I have all of the learnings, the conversations, and more that you've had so far this afternoon. But please remember that as you're gaining all of this valuable information, all of this insight, please remember that our American Parkinson Disease Association chapter, APDA, we're here to support you. As you journey, as you walk together, we're walking with you on your Parkinson's journey. At the close of this session, if you could please make sure that you complete the brief program evaluation. It was handed out at the beginning, and it's inside of your bags. So if you could take a quick moment to locate that evaluation at the close of our presentation, could you just take just a few minutes and complete it, and you can hand that in at the table as you exit through the doors. Finally, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Gammon Earhart. Dr. Earhart is a physical therapist and movement specialist. She completed her physical therapy training at Arcadia University, earned a PhD in movement science here from Washington University in St. Louis, and completed a postdoctoral research fellowship at Oregon Health and Science University. Her research focuses on movement control and rehabilitation, easy for me to say, in a neurodegenerative conditions with an emphasis on gait, balance, and Parkinson's disease. She currently serves as Associate Dean for Physical Therapy, Director of the Program in Physical Therapy, and Professor of Physical Therapy, Neuroscience, and Neurology at Washington University in St. Louis. Gammon is a Catherine Worthingham Fellow of the American Physical Therapy Association. Wow, impressive and honored to have her with us today. Please put your hands together and join us in welcoming Dr. Earhart.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon, and I especially appreciate you sticking around till the bitter end. I know you've been here for a while now. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces here today. I know many of you, and so thank you for coming out. We're going to be talking about both exercise and physical activity and how they're really important ways to help you live well with Parkinson's. So we're going to first talk about the difference between physical activity and exercise. We'll talk about the benefits that physical activity and exercise can convey. Then we'll really talk a lot about how do you get started, or if you've already started, how do you keep going? What should you be doing? How often should you be doing it? How hard should you be working while you're doing it? Talk about a few pitfalls to avoid as you're trying to maintain exercise and physical activity in your life. We'll look at some individual examples that are just some people that I made up, and you'll get to chime in and give your vote as to whether they're doing well or not so well with their own exercise and physical activity, and then a little bit about what you should do after we finish here today. So what is the difference between physical activity and exercise? Let's start with physical activity. Physical activity is any bodily movement, basically. This is the World Health Organization's definition. Anything that you do that's movement counts as physical activity. So it could be movement that you're doing while you're at work, while you're at play. It could be movement that you're doing as part of your daily activities, your errands, your household chores, whatever it may be. And it includes things like cleaning, cooking, shopping, walking, standing instead of sitting, and even if you're sitting here in your seat right now and you're fidgeting, that's physical activity, so congratulations if you are fidgeting. So what's the difference between physical activity and exercise? Well, exercise is actually a subset of physical activity, and it's different because it's something that is planned, that is structured, and that is repetitive. So it's not just random movement, it's not just something that you're going about doing because you're trying to achieve some other goal. You're actually doing it because you're focused on the benefit of that movement, so you've planned it, it's structured, you know what you're going to do, how long you're going to do it, how hard you're going to work while you're doing it, and it's repetitive. You don't just do it once and it's done. It's something that you do repeatedly throughout a single session of exercise, but also repeatedly over time by exercising not just one day and then calling it good, but exercising across your lifetime. And so you'll notice examples here, again, include walking. So walking could be exercise or it could be physical activity. Depends what the goal is, right? But then other forms of exercise include things like strength training, yoga, dancing, boxing, swimming, whatever it may be. Anything that's planned, structured, and repetitive would be exercise. And I want you to remember that both physical activity and exercise are vital. One or the other is not enough. You need to be focusing on both. So what are the general benefits of physical activity and exercise? I think you've heard a little bit of this from the previous two speakers today, but there are some immediate benefits. So exercise can enhance your sleep quality right away, can reduce your anxiety, can lower your blood pressure. So these are things that happen acutely. You do exercise, you see these effects right in that moment, in that day. But there are also a lot of long-term benefits that accumulate over time with regular exercise. And these include brain health. So exercise can reduce the risk of things like dementia. Your heart health is dependent on exercise and physical activity. Regular exercise and physical activity is known to prevent or reduce the risk of some types of cancers. It can help you maintain a healthy weight, strong bones, and help with things like balance and coordination. So there are lots and lots of general benefits to being physically active and to exercising. But what about the benefits specifically for people with Parkinson's disease? Well, exercise actually gives you the opportunity to delay progression of the disease. This particular study showed that people with Parkinson's disease who exercised regularly, meaning they did at least 150 minutes a week of moderate or vigorous activity, they followed them for 1 year and showed that the people who were exercising had better mobility, they were able to move more effectively, better physical function in their everyday lives. They had slower disease progression across the course of that year. Their thinking did not decline like it did in the people who weren't exercising. Their care partners reported less strain, and the people who were exercising said their quality of life was better than the quality of life of those who weren't exercising. So definitely some clear benefits here that these people who were exercising reported. This study was looking not at exercise now, but instead at physical activity. And remember, I said both are important. This study showed that people who had more physical activity, regardless of how much they exercised or didn't exercise, also did better over time. And so in particular, they showed that the average overall levels of physical activity were related to slower changes or declines in posture and gait, better maintenance of daily living activities, and better cognitive processing speed. So walking, doing your everyday things that you need to accomplish in life, and thinking were all better among the people who were more physically active. And then specifically, if the people were also exercising, that moderate to vigorous exercise was directly related to their changes in walking and balance. So more exercise meant better walking and better balance, but so did more physical activity. So imagine if you put both of them together, both of them enhancing your ability to walk and to balance. And then it was actually work-related physical activity that was related most to the changes in thinking that people experienced. The more engaged they were in work-related activities, the less their thinking declined over time. So again, I can't emphasize enough that you've got to think about both exercise and physical activity together. So I could literally do probably several days worth of presentations about all of the benefits, but I think there's enough to convince you, hopefully, that there are lots of benefits. If you want to talk more about specific benefits, we can do that later. But I really want to dive into, okay, it's good. We know it's good. We've known it's good for a long time. Socrates recommended exercise, for goodness sake, right? So it's not new information. So how do we do it? Well, before starting any exercise program, you should get medical clearance. So check with your physician, work with a physical therapist or another health professional who can help you to get started. I also recommend that when you're doing that exercise, where you're doing something that's planned, structured, and repetitive, do it at a time when your medication is most effective, because that's going to allow you to engage in the exercise more fully than if you try to do it at a time when you feel like your medicine has worn off and it's really not working that well. So try to find times during the day to exercise when your medicine is working. And then develop a plan that includes both physical activity and exercise, and figure out how you're going to accomplish these goals. So, what should you do? You should make it fabulous. These are the 4 components, FABS, the 4 types of exercise that are critical. So the F is for flexibility, the A is for aerobic exercise, B is for balance, and S is for strength, FABs. If your exercise is fabulous, you will also feel fabulous. So we're gonna walk through each of these and talk about what the heck is flexibility and what should I do? So, what to do for flexibility? Flexibility is really talking about stretching. So we recommend both dynamic stretching and static stretching. So let me just give you an example. Dynamic stretching would be like if I want to move my wrist back and forth, I'm moving it all the way in one direction, all the way in the other, and I'm going back and forth. It's dynamic, it's moving. I'm not holding it in one position, I'm going back and forth. This is the kind of warm-up stretching that I would do before exercise. Static stretching, on the other hand, would be, okay, I'm gonna hold here. That's the kind of stretching that's preferred after you've exercised. So do some dynamic stretching to warm up, static stretching after you've exercised, and you really want to think about doing all of the major muscle groups. So it's not just your arms and your legs, also think about your core, your neck, trunk, those types of things. And think about how each joint moves. So a lot of times we think about stretching like I just showed you, I was just bending and straightening my wrist, right? My wrist also rotates. I can also do these kind of movements. So don't just get stuck in one common movement, but think about what are the other ways that your joints also move. So bend, straighten, and rotate. How much stretching should I do? Well, if you're talking about dynamic stretching, so this again, 8 to 10, then I'm good. Then I can move on 8 to 10 on this side. Now I'm ready to type my next novel. Or my first, or, well, not gonna happen, but anyway. If you're talking about static stretching, where you're holding in a position, you wanna hold for at least 15 seconds, up to 30 seconds, as you can tolerate it. If you go like this and hold it for 3 seconds, that's not really gonna do much. So try to count and get to at least 15 seconds, and then repeat that hold of 15 to 30 seconds for 2 to 3 times per stretch. And then you want to be stretching at least 2 to 3 days out of the week. So if there are 2 or 3 days where you're doing structured exercise, it'd be great if you do the dynamic stretching beforehand, the static stretching afterwards. But this is also something that you could incorporate every day. And if that's possible, that is ideal, to do a little bit of stretching every day. And the idea behind stretching is to maintain your range of motion, so the full range that your joints can move through, and to combat some of the stiffness and rigidity that sometimes people feel when they have muscle stiffness associated with Parkinson's. So how hard should you be stretching, or how far should you be stretching? You want to stretch to the point of just slight discomfort, okay? So you want to feel a stretch. You don't want to stop somewhere in the middle. You want to get to the end. But you don't want to push so hard that it's really painful. And then as you stretch over time, you will begin to see gains in how far you can go. So how far I can go today, if I keep up this pattern, will probably be not as far as I can go a month from now. So I always want to just be going to that slight level of discomfort and judging how far I can go each day. So that was flexibility. So we have the F so far of our FABs. Now we're on to the A, which is aerobic activity. So aerobic activity is activity that gets your heart going faster than it is when you're just sitting here, right? So these are prolonged rhythmic activities, typically that use large muscle groups. So you can think of something like walking, or running, or cycling, swimming, rowing, elliptical. A lot of times people don't think about using your arms, but you can definitely do that too. So if you have an arm bike that just sits on the table in front of you, that's a great way to get your heart going. So that's another option for aerobic exercise. So how much? The recommendation is to do aerobic exercise where you get your heart rate up at least 3 days a week. And you want to ultimately get up to 30 minutes at a time. But that's a lot to ask, right? So you don't have to do 30 minutes. You don't have to do 30 minutes ever, but you certainly don't need to do it right away. And more studies are showing that if you do just 5 minutes, it does have a benefit. And if you do 5 minutes 6 times, that's 30, right? You get the same bang for your buck as if you did 30 minutes in a row. So don't feel like, oh, I can't possibly do 30 minutes. This is not for me. If you can do 5 minutes, great. If you can do 2 minutes, start with 2 minutes and build up over time. Anything is better than nothing. So ultimately, what you'd like to do is accumulate 150 minutes per week of what they call moderate intensity activity. Or if you want to work really, really hard so that you don't have to work for as long, you can do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. And these are general recommendations for adults. They're no different for people with Parkinson's disease. And so how hard do you work? What does it mean to say moderate intensity or vigorous intensity? Well, there are 2 ways that you can judge that. You can judge it based on your heart rate. So how fast are you getting your heart going while you're doing this aerobic exercise? Or you can base it on how hard do I feel like I'm working, and that's called RPE, or rate of perceived exertion. So either one of those is fine. If we're talking about moderate intensity, your target is to get up to 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. We'll talk about how to calculate that in a minute. Or to feel like you're at a 4 or 5 out of 10 as to how hard you feel like you're working. If you're talking about vigorous intensity, that's obviously getting your heart going even faster. So now we're talking 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate, or a 6 or 7 out of 10 on that scale of how hard do I feel like I'm working. So let's talk about these a little bit more. So using your heart rate to monitor how you're feeling, the chart on the left-hand side here shows target heart rate zones for different levels of activity. So the green column is moderate intensity, and that orange column is vigorous intensity. So that's where we'd be aiming, for moderate to vigorous. And in order to know what % of your maximum heart rate you're at, you gotta know what your maximum heart rate is, right? Does anybody know how to calculate that? Has anybody ever heard that? 220 minus your age. Yep, so 220 minus your age. So if you are 20 years old, what's 220 minus 20? Didn't know you'd have to do math today, right? 200, right? So a 20-year-old's maximum heart rate is 200. So if they want to work at moderate intensity, they have to get to 60 to 70% of that, which is 119 to 139 beats per minute. If they want to work at vigorous intensity, they've got to be between 139 and 158 beats per minute. Now, if somebody is instead 70 years old, we take 220 minus 70, we end up with 150. So now we're getting up to whatever percentage of 150. So somebody who's 70, moderate intensity is between 89 and 104 beats per minute for your heart rate. And then vigorous intensity is 104 to 118. So as we get older, we don't have to get our heart rate up as high to reach these target heart rate zones. And you can check your heart rate by, you could have a fancy device that's monitoring it for you, or you can simply just take a break and check it on your wrist. You usually check it for 10 seconds and multiply that by 6. That tells me how many beats per minute. A little cumbersome. And I will note that some people with Parkinson's disease don't have a typical heart rate response to exercise. So if you're one of those people, your heart rate might not increase as much as you would expect it to. So I always tell people, don't rely just on heart rate, also pay attention to how you're feeling. So that's this RPE, or rate of perceived exertion scale, on the right-hand side. So if we're aiming for moderate activity, that's, I feel, a 4 or a 5 out of 10. So you feel like you could do that activity for relatively long periods of time. You can still talk to somebody. If they come in and say, hey, how's it going? You can have a short conversation. Whereas if you're working at vigorous intensity, you're at a 6 or a 7. This is where you're starting to feel like it's becoming a bit uncomfortable. You're working pretty hard. You're a little short of breath, but you can still say one sentence to somebody. You can't carry on a short conversation, however. So it's a little bit more intense than the moderate. Okay? So that's how you can measure, am I in that moderate zone? Am I in that vigorous zone? And then again, you're targeting 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity each week. All right, so we have the FA so far. Let's go for B now. B is balance. And so balance can refer to both static and dynamic activities. So you can do something like stand on one leg, which would be a static activity, where you're not moving around, or it could be something like I'm going to shift my weight back and forth from one leg to the other, which is more of a dynamic activity. You can do things like reaching, practicing sit to stand. Going up and down stairs is a balance activity in and of itself. And also in the category of balance, I put things like agility, so moving your body quickly in different directions. So that may be like stepping in different directions, turning, walking around or over obstacles, walking backwards. Dancing is an agility activity in and of itself. And then another way to challenge your balance is to multitask. So don't just stand there on one leg and balance, but also be naming as many words as you can think of that begin with the letter D, or doing math in your head, or having a conversation with somebody, something that's going to distract your attention away from being able to concentrate on your balance. So you have to juggle those two things at once. So for balance activities, you should be doing these 2 to 3 days per week. If you can do it again on a daily basis, that's great. And there are ways to incorporate this into everyday life. So if you're standing chopping vegetables for dinner, you could try standing on one leg while you're doing it. And that's a great place to do it because you've got the counter there. If you lose your balance, just put your hands down on the counter to support yourself. So thinking about ways to build this in to everyday activity. And ideally, you want to get about 30 minutes of balance activity each of those 2 to 3 days per week. And in terms of how hard you're working, you want it to be challenging. You don't want it to be something that you could just, do all day without any difficulty. You want to feel like, oh, I'm trying to keep myself up here. I can feel that's challenging. But you don't want to do something that's dangerous. So if you don't feel steady on standing on one leg, you shouldn't go stand in the middle of the room with nothing around and go do that. You could stand at the kitchen counter, like I said, or you could stand in the corner where the walls come together, so that if you lose your balance, you can just lean back into the corner. But thinking about using your arms for support or other stable structures when needed can help with that. And in general, you want to progress over days, weeks, months in terms of how much balance activity you're doing, how much you're challenging yourself. If what you have been doing becomes too easy, try to bring it up a notch. Maybe you add a thinking task that distracts you, or maybe you are walking and turning your head at the same time to challenge your balance during walking, those types of things. All right, so that's balance. And then the final part, we have FAB so far, we need to add the S, is strength. So strength training is designed to target your major muscle groups of upper and lower body, as well as your trunk or your core. And there are a number of different ways that you could do this. So you could go to the gym and use weight machines. You could use resistance bands, and I think there's a resistance band provided for you today in your goodie bag, so it's just that elastic strap type of thing. Or you can use your own body weight for exercise. In general, it's not recommended to use free weights like dumbbells or those kind of things if you don't have any experience lifting weights. That wouldn't be the place to start. However, if you've been lifting free weights like dumbbells, barbells throughout your life, great, keep it up. But if you haven't, probably start with one of these ways to approach it instead. You want to think about getting muscles on the front, back, and sides of your body. A lot of times people think, oh yeah, I'm going to do these biceps curls, and then they don't ever do their triceps, with big hawking biceps, and then they look like, what happened back there, right? So you got to think about front, back, and sides. So don't get stuck on one exercise. Think about keeping it balanced and rounded out. And then you can do circuit training for this. So if you are going to a facility that has machines, you can pop around to the different machines. If you do it quickly enough, you can get your heart rate up, so you're getting in some of that aerobic activity at the same time. And you could even do something like, all right, I'm going to do this while I'm standing on one foot. Now you've got balance in there too. So even though there are all of these things that I'm saying you need to do, they don't all have to be done in isolation because they could take all day, right? So figuring out how to put them together and incorporate them all can be really helpful. So for strength training, you should be doing at least 2 days per week, and they shouldn't be consecutive days. So don't strength train on Monday and Tuesday and then not come back to it until the next Monday. Maybe do Monday and Thursday. And the reason for that is when you are training your muscles, if you're working hard enough, you're creating teeny tiny tears in the muscle, and then the muscle has to recover in order to adapt and grow and get stronger. And if you don't give it time to recover in between, then you're going to end up with muscle soreness and a lot of fatigue. So there's not an advantage to going and training, strength training every day. That's actually a disadvantage. You need to do it, give your body time to recover, repair, and then do it again. So again, 2 days a week, non-consecutive days, and somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes per session should be enough to get a good strength training in. And so you should be doing weights that you can lift 10 times, and by the time you lift it the 10th time, you're like, oh, that was tough. You don't want it to be so light that you're on, this 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. That's not making your muscle stronger. It might be making it more endurant. Might be building up the endurance of that muscle, but it's not making it stronger. It has to be where you're like, 10. Okay, that was a good weight. Okay? And so you want to do 2 or 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions. So if you're like 10 on the first set, maybe you get to 9 on the second set, and then barely do 8 on the third set. That sounds like a good weight for you, right? And then as you do that over time, it's going to become too light. You're going to be like 10, 11, 12. Oh, well, I just skipped 10. That means you need to increase the weight. Your muscle has gotten stronger, and so it needs a bigger challenge. So that's how you can gradually increase over time. All right. So this is a recommendation for physical activity that we usually see, which is that 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise, 2 days a week of strength training. Absolutely. But don't forget that if we only have this, what do we have? We just have AS. That's not good. We need it to be FABs, right? So don't forget about the flexibility and the balance, which are really important, particularly for people with Parkinson's. And then also consider your starting point. So we're all at different places on our journeys, right? I could no sooner go out and run a marathon than I could fly to the moon, right? But for other people, I just volunteered at the St. Louis Marathon last weekend, and I was amazed. These people run, 26 miles and they keep running. I'm like, you're done. So you really got to think about where you are and where you're starting. So if you currently have a sedentary lifestyle and you're not exercising, it would be a very bad idea to go to the gym tomorrow and try to knock out vigorous strength training and 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity. You don't want to do that. You need to build. And it's totally fine to start where you are. It's best to start where you are. So if you're going from sedentary, then you might want to move to, okay, I'm going to do 1 day a week of strength training, and I'm not going to make it real hard. I'm just going to get started, and then I'm going to gradually progress it. And I'm not going to try to get 150 minutes a week. I'm going to start with the 5 minutes that I can do today, and I'm going to do that 3 or 4 days this week. I'm going to get 20 minutes. Great, you're started, and then you build it over time. So these are the ultimate goals of, the 150 minutes, 2 days of strength training, et cetera. But starting where you are is really important. And don't forget about physical activity. So I spent all this time talking about FABs, which was all about exercise. But physical activity is just as important. In fact, the negative effects of sitting can actually cancel the positive effects of exercise. So if I go to the gym and hit it hard for an hour in the morning and then I go sit at my desk all day and don't move, I've just undone the whole hour. You've got to be moving during the day as well. This was really, this middle bullet point here was a study of college athletes, and they said, okay, we're going to have you come in and do an hour of moderate or vigorous running or cycling. We're going to look at the benefits that you get. And so they had them either sit on their butts for 2 days before they came in, or be active, just move around, have a regular level of activity in their daily lives for the 2 days before they came to exercise. The people who sat for 2 days before had no benefit from an hour of exercise because their body wasn't ready for it, it wasn't primed. But the people who were active beforehand showed the benefits that we would expect. So it's really, really important to be active, and we know that being inactive has different effects on your body than not exercising. There are different physiological pathways. Activity and exercise work in different ways, and they work together. So you really got to do both. So here's just a little sidebar. Average American takes 4,000 to 5,000 steps a day. What's the magic number of steps you want to try to reach? Don't look at the slide. Just tell me what you think. 10,000. It's a myth. It's a nice round number. The data do not support it. What the data say are that actually you should be targeting about 8,000 steps per day, depending on your age, or maybe even 6,000 or 7,000 steps if you're a bit older. And every 1,000 steps increase per day that you make reduces your risk of heart disease and cardiovascular-related death by 15%. It's a huge effect. So imagine if I'm currently at 4,000 steps a day, and over time I get up to 8,000 steps per day, which would be my target. That would reduce my risk of mortality from cardiovascular problems by 60%. Just by steps per day, not even exercise. This is just walking around, just physical activity. There's no drug and no diet that can do that for us. So in terms of physical activity, what to do? Anything, right? We said physical activity is any movement. It doesn't matter. Just do something, whatever you enjoy, whatever is going to get you more steps in your day. And there are just a list of things that you can possibly do to add steps in, sort of easy ways. Park far away. I parked around the other side of the church. I walked all the way around the building to get in here. Confession, I didn't know where I was going. It was an accident. But it did get me more steps. And it'll get me more steps when I go back out to my car afterward. All right? You can also walk in place. I have a smartwatch. I check my steps at the end of the day. If I don't have them, I'm watching TV like this. I'm getting that number. I'm not going to let it go by. You know, I'm closing my rings. So that's okay too. Somebody in here earlier was saying they walk or get up during commercials. That's a great thing to do. Get up, go to the bathroom, get a drink, walk down the hall and back. Whatever it is, just get up. Get up once an hour if you can. Stand up, move around just a little bit. It all adds up. So try to do it frequently throughout the day. As I said, you want to aim for 8,000 steps. If you're middle-aged, if you're over 60, you can aim for 6,000 to 7,000 steps and get almost the same benefit as if you did the 10,000. The benefits start to plateau at these levels. You don't have to push to get all the way to 10,000. And then how hard should you be working? Again, it doesn't matter. It's physical activity. It could be low intensity, moderate, high intensity, whatever it happens to be. If you are walking out to the mailbox and it's going to rain and you want to really move it, great. If it's a beautiful day and you want to stop and smell the, lilacs that are blooming right now, if you want to stop and smell the lilacs that are along the side of your driveway, also fine. You're going to get the same number of steps either way. It all counts as physical activity. So pitfalls to avoid as you exercise. One is low expectations. Studies show that people who don't expect that exercise is going to help them tend not to stick with it. And like I've said, there's a ton of evidence that yes, it will help you. It will help you in so many ways. So expect it to help. Lack of confidence is another big problem. We call this self-efficacy. So your confidence in your ability to exercise. This is the #1 predictor of whether somebody will or will not exercise, their level of confidence in their ability to do it. So a way to tackle this is to think about, well, what can I do? Let me start there. Let me set goals that are realistic so that I can actually achieve them, have some success, and that's going to keep me motivated to keep going. And let me think about, what is it that I'm not sure about? Why am I not confident? Is it because I'm not sure what I'm going to do when the weather is bad? Well, think about, okay, is Walmart nearby? Maybe I could go there. Maybe I could go to the grocery store and get my steps that way. So having a plan for how to overcome things that might get in your way can be important. Going in alone is another common approach. I'm just going to go to the gym and knock it out. Nobody's going to be there, but that's all right. And then comes the day, I don't really feel like it. I'm not going to go today. Whereas if there was somebody who was expecting you to come to a class, like, oh, I don't want to let them down, I'll go do it. And then invariably you feel better after you do it, even though walking in you didn't want to do it. So being accountable to a friend or family member or engaging in some sort of group exercise can really help people to stick with it over the long term. Another thing people say, I really just don't have enough time. Well, that excuse is out the window because I already told you 5 minutes is enough time, right? I guarantee all of you, myself included, have 5 minutes throughout our days that are unoccupied. probably for me spent like this. Put your phone away, Gammon, and find the time to get in the steps, to get in the exercise. I find that putting it on my calendar as an event, just like I would anything else, like an appointment, like, oh, I'm supposed to go get a haircut. I'm not gonna not go because I don't feel like it, right? Put exercise on there the same way, and it has to be just as sacred as any other appointment. I'm not gonna, not use the time that I've set aside. Another thing is doing things you don't enjoy. There are lots of different ways to achieve the goals that we've talked about here today. If you love dancing, dance. If you hate dancing, don't dance, right? Just because, it's supposed to be good for you. If you hate it, you're not gonna do it. And the one thing I can guarantee you is exercise only works if you do it, right? If you don't, you get nothing. Not challenging yourself enough is another thing. I see a lot of people who go to exercise classes where they've done the same thing for 10 years. They go and they do the same thing every time. It's very familiar, it's very comforting, but it's not challenging anymore. You can still go to that same class, you can still do those same things, but increase the intensity, increase the time, increase the challenge, right? Don't just get stuck in a rut of doing the exact same thing. And then life getting in the way, things like weather, which I already talked about. Think about a plan for how you can walk in your house and get the steps or do something else. If you're going on vacation, have a plan for how you're going to be active on vacation, or if the point of the vacation is to not be active, that's okay, but have a plan for how you're going to start back up when you get back. Because it's really easy to say, well, I haven't been doing it. I'm off, I fell off of my routine, and that's all right. I'm going to give myself one more day. I still haven't unpacked my suitcase. I'm going to give myself one more day. Don't do that. Because the longer you go and not get back into it, the more the benefits that you've accrued by being active and exercising are fading, and the harder it's going to be to start it back up. So have a plan for those types of things. And then my other recommendation is to get outside if and when you can. 5 minutes walking in nature can improve your mood, your self-esteem, and promote relaxation. Just 5 minutes. So if you have a choice of walking outside versus walking around your living room, get outside. It'll give you even more benefits. Frequent exposure to nature is also known to reduce anxiety and depression and give people a sense of well-being and fulfillment. And physical activity in a green space can lower stress, and cortisol, which is a stress-related hormone, levels drop when people are outside. So if you can do it outside, even better. All right, so we're going to talk about 3 individual examples here. You're going to see these, again, made-up people, and then you're going to say, are they doing well, or are they not doing so well in terms of their exercise and physical activity? So we'll start with Jim.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings are gym days for me. I don't bother with stretching. I just dive right into weightlifting. It's how I've always done it, and I like the challenge. I focus on making my body work for me, pushing myself to stand on one foot or close my eyes while lifting. It's not easy, but it helps with my balance, and I need that. Cardio has never been my thing, so I skip it. After the gym, I'm usually wiped out, so I head home, plop in my chair, and catch up on TV or take a nap until dinner. Tuesdays, I meet up with some friends for coffee and to catch up. It's a good change of pace from the gym. Then I usually run a few errands. Thursdays are my catch-up days at home, taking care of things around the house. I like being productive. The weekends are all about family. Spending time with my grandkids is always the highlight. I manage to get about 4,000 steps a day. Nothing extraordinary, but it's enough to keep me moving.
All right, so that's Jim. We're going to fill out this chart now. You're either going to vote for going great or room for improvement in each of these categories for Jim. So think about what Jim told you about his habits regarding exercise and physical activity. So flexibility, how many say he's doing great with this stretching? He has room for improvement. All right, yes, absolutely. In fact, he specifically said, I don't bother with stretching, I just dive right in, right? All right, what about aerobic activity? Does he sound like he's getting his heart rate up? Maybe? No? Yeah, I think there's room for improvement here too, right? So he's lifting weights as his primary form of exercise, but I didn't hear anything about cardio. And in fact, he said, cardio is not my thing, so I don't do it, right? What about balance? Yeah, so we heard he's trying to like stand on one foot while he's lifting to challenge his balance. So he's thinking about balance. What about strength? I gave him 2 X's for strength because he is really knocking it out of the park there, right? He's working hard on getting stronger. And what about physical activity? He said he gets 4,000 steps a day. Room for improvement? Yeah, so 4,000 isn't bad, but it's not all the way to what his target should be. All right, good, you got all those. So let's look at Mindy Mingle next.
My days are always filled with activities and people, which I love. Mondays are book club days. I get to dive into a good story and chat about it with friends. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to chair yoga. It's a gentle class, but it helps me stay flexible and centered. Wednesdays are special because I volunteer at the library. I have joy helping out, and it's a nice way to stay connected to my community. Fridays are for bingo with my friends. We laugh, we play, and it's always a fun time. Saturdays are my daughter's day to visit, and we spend the afternoon doing jigsaw puzzles. It's a quiet but meaningful way to spend time together. Sundays are for church. I like the sense of peace it gives me to start the week. At home, I get around just fine, but when I head out, it can be a bit tricky. I don't mind using my cane or walker depending on how I'm feeling that day. Sometimes it's a little more effort, but I manage. On average, I get about 2,000 steps in a day. It's not a lot, but being social and staying busy helps me feel good, even if it's a bit of a challenge some days.
All right, so how about Mindy for flexibility? She said chair yoga, right? Yeah, so I gave her credit for chair yoga because that can definitely help with flexibility. What about aerobic exercise? Is she getting her heart rate up? Nope. Balance? Did you hear anything about balance? No? What about strength? And physical activity? No, she was at 2,000 steps per day. So I made up this example because I think a lot of times we overestimate what we're doing because we're moving around, we're busy, we're engaging in a lot of things. Like, this is not somebody who's sitting at home, right? She's out, she's doing things, she's incredibly social and engaged in the community, but it's not hitting some of these targets. So she could definitely think about ways to incorporate some of these things differently. Maybe instead of doing jigsaw puzzles with her daughter, they go for a walk first, and then they work on the puzzle for the rest of the time they have left. So simple changes could help her to move closer to the goals. And last one, Dale Daly.
I start each morning with some stretching to get my body moving. Then I do a meditative Tai Chi routine. It helps me center myself for the day ahead and gets my mind in a calm place. After that, I take the dog for a walk, a little fresh air, and some movement to wake up fully. Mondays and Fridays are big days because I go to boxing class. It's an intense 45-minute workout, and it really gets my blood pumping. I feel stronger after each class, and I love the challenge. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I stick to my home exercise routine using resistance bands and body weight exercises. I focus on my arms, legs, and core, making sure I stay strong where I need it most. Wednesday evenings are a blast. I go square dancing. It's a lot of fun, and it's good for my balance and coordination. I can't believe how much I enjoy it. After supper each evening, I walk the dog again just to get some extra movement in before the day ends. As for how many steps I take, I have no idea. I don't really count, but I'm always moving, so I'm sure I get plenty in. It feels good to stay active, and I try to keep my body as strong as possible.
Right, so how's Dale doing on flexibility? What about aerobic activity? Balance? Strength? Physical activity? Who can tell? Exactly. So I'm going to say room for improvement because at the very least he needs to know what he's doing, right? Maybe it's fine. Maybe absolutely getting enough steps in, or it could be way off. I think when people actually get a means of counting their steps, whether it's a pedometer or a watch, they're oftentimes surprised at how few steps they get. So I would recommend that he start to monitor that a bit. All right, so if there's one thing that this boils down to, this is it. Sit less, move more, exercise. It's that simple. Do what you can do, start where you are, and go from there. So now what? I hope that you use what you learned today to evaluate your own exercise and physical activity habits, and start where you are and do what you can. There are many different resources that you can use to help you get started or to help you modify if you feel like your exercise and physical activity are not where you want them to be. I recommend talking to a healthcare provider, whether it's a physician or a physical therapist. There is a tool online from the American Physical Therapy Association called Find a PT. You can go in there, you can put in your zip code, say that you're looking for someone who specializes in neurologic physical therapy, and they'll show you people close to your home who have that special training and information. If you're interested in seeing therapists at WashU PT, the phone number to call for appointments is there, and we do have direct access now in the state of Missouri, which means you can come see a physical therapist without a referral from your physician. All right, you can look for community options. I mentioned the importance of group classes as one of the approaches. So the American Parkinson Disease Association here in the St. Louis region has a number of wonderful classes. They also have them available online, so you can do them virtually, or you can do them from the recordings at a time that works well for you. And then consider a research study focused on exercise as a way to get started. And shameless plug, we have 2 studies going on now. One is a music-based walking program. We only have about 5 more slots left. It'll be starting up at the end of this month. So if you're interested in that, please contact me. And then we also have a study looking at treadmill training and the importance of aerobic exercise for people who've been recently diagnosed within the past 3 years who have not yet started to take medicine for their Parkinson's. So if you're interested in those, please feel free to contact me. I do have a handout available that will be in the back at the doors as you leave that you can take that summarizes the FABs plus the physical activity information. It has all those tables in there, so you can take that with you. And I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody might have right now.